starting yet. I'm just turning it on because you wanted me to. Testing, testing. So, Eddie, do you want me to keep it on, or can I turn it off until we start?
You can leave it on until we start.
Leave it on? I can't talk to anybody anymore. Hi, Regina. Good. Hey, Scott. Scott, there is a name tag calling your name.
Oh, don't worry.
Oh, Lassiter, there you go. That's right. You have it put in your shirt, so you're good.
You're already leaving.
Yeah. All right, we'll wait like 2 more minutes, then we're going to dive in. So. Did your older one go to Wonders of Learning too?
No, he went to Discovery Montessori in Port Orchard last year.
Oh, cool.
My oldest has to leave because of his age, for the school year, and then my younger one, he's going to slide right in. So it's one of those things where I wanted to get him into a pre-K setup and see how he goes.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like where their birth in the year, strategies just have to be reached,
Having a late first and then realizing, oh wait, start kindergarten. We don't have this extra summer.
No.
Yep.
It's time to be on it. Yeah, that's good.
He jumped right into it. They both love going to school.
That's so good.
And the opposite. I remember, wanting to stay home.
Yeah. To see that when they're happy in school, it's just, well, if you were there, then to see that other, that's nice. Yeah.
And doing all the field trips, everything that I can do or come home. So it's fun too. I don't tell him much. When I surprise all of them, he just sees me. What are you doing? Here to help today.
That's nice. That's really nice. It's good stuff. Good. Okay. There are a few people, then I'll wait 1 more minute. Oh, then I'll be patient. Okay. Do you have a name tag?
I do.
Okay. Do you have the paper handouts? So, Debbie, how many people are still out there? Okay. Okay. So we'll just pause for a moment.
I don't think I laid eyes on anything that said so. I really don't.
Or maybe you subconsciously saw it.
Were you the only one? Yeah, just you in the blue light. The blue light and your parents and then your coach too.
It just worked really well, so we got to visit a little. Yeah, that's nice.
But I didn't know I had read something that showed like you're getting right now.
It's okay. You were on time. We're going to wait until they're out there. We'll wait just a moment more to get them in here.
Did you enjoy your Starbucks? I did, and I was very productive. I had a lot of work done.
Do you work when you go and do a zone? Is that?
So it's actually like the first time I've ever done it, but I wasn't focusing at home, so I went to Starbucks to try it out.
That's like for certain temperaments and styles, like that works so well to have that buzz of the background noise and zone in.
But not have things that can actually
That need you. Yeah. That's how I am. Yeah.
He left the TV on. I was like, I want to turn
Hi, guys. Come on in. There's a handout and yeah, handout. There's seats. There's a couple up here, a couple there. And is anybody else? Are we waiting for anyone else out there? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah. Okay, good deal. And this is on, right? I turned it on. Can you hear me? It's for a week now. Debbie, will you let Eddie know we're starting so he can push the button to start it? Yeah. Hi, guys. Good to see you. Everyone has a blue, like a purpley tint. So I trust you're healthy because you don't look healthy. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of fun. All right, we just need to wait for him for a second. Thank you. All right, you all, we are going to get started. I'm so glad that we get to do this. So this is parenting is one of my passions, and supporting parents is also a passion. So I'm just really glad we get to spend some time together. Before we get started, just a couple things. We're going to take a break halfway through so that you can use the restroom. If you're not familiar with where the restrooms are, you go past where the kids are, down that hall. That's where the restrooms are. 2 hours, and we're going to cover. And so I have this balance of I want to cover and I want it meaningful so you have time to chew on it. So we probably won't get to everything that is on the list, but that's okay. We're going to get this to be done. Questions are welcome. I want this to be valuable, so feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll have questions at the end as well, okay? All right, so before we do anything else, I want to just start with prayer, okay? Heavenly Father, thank you for get to meet. Thank you for the role of being a parent, a grandparent, a supportive aunt or uncle, a caregiver. All of those roles, loving on children, are just so important. I pray that you will encourage us, give us what you want for us to take individually, and to have encouraged hearts and challenged in ways that reflect your love and your truth. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so a little bit really quick, if you don't know me, my name is Debbie Rue, and most of you know me, but we've been part of Crossroads since our daughter was a baby, and now there she is over there. She's like fully grown. So anyway, she has babies. You're fully grown. Yeah. Anyway, we've been part of Crossroads for a long, long time. We love our church family. We've done, Alan is my husband, we've done parenting things through the decades in classes and stuff, and he's very happy to just be supporting a button because that's not his favorite thing, but he used to do it with me, which was really nice. But this time it's my turn. Let's see. We have 2 kids that are grown, and we have 3, soon to be 4 grandsons, so it's our season of life. All right, so before we do anything else, really quick, I want you to, and I want you to share let's say your name so people know your name, and then will you please share what's a challenge, a current challenge, or a current joy in your parenting. And if you don't have kids yet, because we have a group of people, which I love, that are here, that's so cool, what you anticipate, what's the joy you're looking forward to, or what's something that terrifies you of this process that you're going to be doing, okay? So we'll just take like 2 minutes to just introduce yourself to somebody and share something about your parenting, okay? All right, just a little bit more time. Okay, there's probably more you could share, but that's a good start. So we'll go ahead and focus back in here as we get started. All right, so tonight we are going to explore the meaning. What does it mean to parent with grace and truth? What it's all about. We're going to look at what it looks like. We're going to explore what drives it. We're going to look at some practical ways, like some helpful ways to actually put it in place. Because this journey of parenting with grace and truth is ongoing, and we're all in the middle of our own learning about grace and truth in our own life, and we get to infuse our learning into our kids' learning. Anyway, there's just a lot. There's a lot in the process, and it's a slow process. So, what is parenting with grace and truth? Parenting with grace and truth means that you parent your child with intentionality. So it's a really intentional kind of parenting where you are weaving intentionally both grace as a foundation in your family's relationships, and you're using God's truth, the Word, as the loving defining boundaries in your family and for your family. So kids who are parented with grace and truth come to know that they are unconditionally loved. Both by their parents and by God. That is so important. They come to just know that deep in their fibers. We're loved. I'm loved by my parents, and I'm loved. And they come to know that even though they make mistakes and they do wrong things, they're forgiven. And there's hope. There's always hope. And there's always opportunities to continue on. There's no heaviness in that. So they come to know that there's truly right and wrong choices, and they come to know and experience that living in the spirit of loving obedience produces peace and healthy harmonies in your relationships. And I want to say that again. It's not a popular word, and it has a different connotation for a lot of people, but when you parent with grace and truth, your kids will learn that obedience comes from a heart. It's safe to obey someone who loves you. It's safe to obey someone who loves you. And obeying someone who loves you is a reflection of that relationship with your parent, and then later it's also with God. So it sets them up well. Parenting with grace and truth helps kids learn what obedience is. And that's super important because that's the foundation for peace and harmony in your home. So you learn, when you parent with grace, start to learn that they don't have to fear obedience when they're obeying a loving authority. So that's part of that. So the really big idea. Now, what happens in that is how that looks in your family. It will look different than your friend's family or your brother or sister's family, or it will look different because when you're parenting with grace and truth, you're not just cookie cutter following, I do this and then I do this and then I do this and then this, and if you don't do this, I do this. I mean, it's not that, nor is it, I don't know what I do, I just am going to let it happen. But it is not a cookie cutter approach. It's an interaction of living out grace. At the same time, you're infusing the truth of the gospel and God's word into the boundaries that you have, and you're doing both at the same time. All right, so that's hard. I'll just say that. It's hard. You will mess up, and there you experience God's grace, right? So that's a beautiful reality that it's both really hard to do, it's really powerful to do, and on a different level, our Heavenly Father is working in us the things we're wanting to work in our kids. Did you get that parallel? So that's a really comforting thing to remember when you feel like, oh man, I just really blew that one, because you will just really blow that one. So they go together. It also means that because you are holding both grace and truth in a parenting situation, it's going to look a little different for each child. Some temperaments needs, well, I'm not going to give examples of that right now, but just their different temperaments need different things. Different developmental ages need different kinds of interactions. So you're always honoring who the child is at that point in time as, and that's part of the grace, as you are helping them learn how to live within the boundaries that are reflective of what God wants for us. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you're feeling, that feels like a kind of big, just take a breath. It's big, but God learn little bit by little bit. So as we talk today, what I really want you to remember is you don't have to memorize everything that we covered today. You're going to hear lots of ideas, lots of suggestions and tools. What I hope for you is that you will be encouraged and then you will be open to what is it you want to take, just something. You can't take it all, but just take one thing and put it into play and practice it, and that will be fruitful for the day, okay? So, and for the week and for the month. Okay, so parenting with grace and truth. Let's start with grace. What does grace mean? I just want to hear from you. What does grace mean? Anybody have a sense of that? Undeserved favor, yeah. Undeserved favor. So, undeserved favor. Okay, how does that apply as a parent? How would undeserved favor show up as you parent your children? So, showing love.
Showing love, even though they haven't done anything to earn the love, or because they deserve love even if they haven't earned it.
Yeah. So part of that grace is showing love, showing your children not for what they do, but for who they are. That's huge. That's huge. And some of you, that's like, well, that's obvious. But some of you grew up in homes where that's not obvious, and it feels like it's a conditional thing. But when we love with grace, we choose to love them, not for what they do. We just choose to love them because they are the little ones that God's entrusted to us. That's super important. So grace is that undeserved favor. It's loving without limits. That's if you only have grace. It's love, given freely. You don't earn a thing. It's the kindness and the empathy and forgiveness and understanding and helping, coming alongside. Those are all wrapped up when we talk about parenting with grace. All right, so why do we need that? It's kind of obvious in some ways. We need it because it shows our children that our kids need to know that we're on their side. That's huge. And I think this is so interesting. Grace helps our children tolerate the truth. Grace helps our children tolerate the truth. If we don't have grace, if we don't have love and warmth and empathy and kindness and forgiveness, then those rules, the standards, they're big, and it creates heart attitudes in our kids that we don't want. And we'll talk that in just a minute. Okay, so if you need grace, but if you parent only with grace, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to push the boundaries. Yes, they're going to push the boundaries beyond measure, because there wouldn't even. If you parent with just grace, there aren't even boundaries, or they're very, very soft. Yeah. So there's a little structure, lots of freedom, and there's a huge focus on you want them like that. I want my children to be happy. We all want our kids to be happy, But if that's our goal in parenting, then we are going to, we're going to not hold anything, boundaries that hold them become uncomfortable. And so parenting is really what sets you up for permissive parenting. So parenting with just grace is going to be what the research calls permissive parenting. Permissive parenting is really warm. It's really warm in the moment. There's a lot of freedom. There isn't a lot of order. You can do anything you want. Oh, you are just so cute that way. I love it. And you're not really including any, you're not putting in what's good for others. You're just enjoying them. Or you can be kind of fed up with them and say, I don't care what you do. I'm just so tired, I don't care. So that would also be permissive, permissive parenting, but that's neglectful permissiveness. So the effects of permissive parenting, kids will grow up struggling to live within boundaries, tend to be more self-centered. So that's not really, it doesn't have really great fruit. Okay, so that's permissive parenting that is just parenting. Now, pause. What does truth mean? The way we're talking about it today. What is truth? Any thoughts? I will tell you. Truth is the ultimate timeless realities that God designed in His creation. That's truth. We live in truth, we do what's right. A truthful person faces what is real and what is reality. And it shows itself in our morality, our standards, our expectations, our evaluations, our judgment, our confrontation, our limits, integrity. Why do kids need a parent with truth? And the kids don't understand the real limits of life. They don't understand reality, necessary in order to thrive. They don't know that if we don't give that to them. So truth has value. It's really important. But if we ignore the grace and we focus on the parenting with just truth, then we're going to, let me ask you, what would that look like? Parenting just with truth. What kind of things would show up in your home? And maybe showed up in your home that you grew up in? Pardon? Harsh parenting. Yeah. Rules. Demands. Yeah. Rules and demands. Yeah. Harsh. Lots of structure. Lots and lots of structure. There's little empathy. There's little freedom. And the law there, the law rules because I said so. So, because I said so, I am the authority. You will do what I say because I said so. So that's a sign that you are leaning, that's one of those things that goes with not the warmth part and having a lot of just the truth. So that kind of parenting is the authoritarian parenting. So authoritarian parenting in literature and the research, authoritarian parenting has lots of structure, order without freedom. There isn't choice. Choice is really not valued because obedience in conformity is valued. That's what's really important. Behavior is the marker of obedience. Authoritarian homes, behavior is the marker of obedience. So do it because I said so, not because it's the right thing to do. And punishment comes when you're not complying. Punishment is given because compliance is so important, because you want them to do what's right. And so as I say this, so we have authoritarian parenting and we have permissive parenting, and we all grew up with something. We grew up either in a home that has a lot of permissiveness or a home that tended to have a lot of authoritarian, and maybe they had a blend, some too, but every human is going to lean one way or the other, right? Depending on where you grew up, how you grew up, you will lean one way or the other. So the imbalance toward truth is authoritarian parenting. The imbalance toward grace is permissive parenting, and neither one has really good outcomes. In fact, so this is interesting. The research with authoritarian parenting is there are 4 outcomes. Kids get stifled. They don't feel valued. They start pushing against things. And so what you end up having is resentment as they get older. So that's not fair. I can't trust adults. Rebellion. I'll do the opposite of what you say just to show you I can do it. Revenge. They may be winning now, but you just wait. I'll get even. Or retreat. I won't get caught. It's a spirit and habit, or I'm a bad person. So if you grew up experiencing some of those feelings, that's probably a sign, not probably, it is a sign that there was some strong authoritarian parenting style in your home. That doesn't mean your parents weren't loving. It does not mean your parents weren't loving. Or if you had no boundaries, it doesn't mean your parents weren't loving. They just, unfortunately, were living, they were parenting without the integration of loving both with grace and truth. Okay? So, those are the really common parenting patterns. Here's an interesting thing. People who grow up, or people who parent with the permissive style when the kids are little, when they're teenagers, they often flip it. Oh no, I'm going crazy. These kids are not cute anymore, and we're going to have some rules, right? And so that happens, and so they flip it to where, I don't care. I don't know. It's out of my hands, or they kind of give up, right? Or the other one is they start with, which did I just say? Permissive. Thank you. I thought, wait a minute. So they get really, sorry, I just said that was wrong. Permissive, and then they get really strict. We will do this. Or they start really strict, and the kids rebel, and then I don't care. Okay? So that's because neither is enough. We need grace and truth. We need grace and truth. Okay, so what's it look like to parent with both grace and truth? And research in parenting literature, the research shows that authoritative parenting is the parenting style that has what we're talking about with grace and truth woven together. So parenting with grace and truth is authoritative parenting with biblical roots. So the research around authoritative parenting, a couple of decades back, it was really new and everyone was so excited about this new style. And I remember thinking, that's not new, it's biblical parenting. It's biblical parenting. It's grace and truth. It's love, and because God is God and he loves us, and if you love him, we're called to obey him, and it's out of love. So you raise your kids in that framework, that's grace and truth. So it's not new, but it was new to the research. Authoritative parenting is balanced parenting. Now, do you notice how tricky it is? Authoritative and authoritarian. Like I always have to think because I get them mixed up in my head. So authoritative is the one you want, the one that has both grace and truth. It's balanced. Sets clear expectations and guidelines. It takes the strength of the authoritarian, the truth, and sets the clear expectations and guidelines. But the difference is it explains why. The parent who is explaining why, what's behind boundaries, and when there's a consequence, why that consequence is given because of why we have these boundaries, that is a very different thing than no, sit down, I told you no, the end, right? It's a different heart stance of the parent. So disciplinary actions are meant as a teaching tool, not as a punishment. They're meant as a teaching tool. Now I want to pause here, because and I know anyone who has any little bit of authoritarian parenting style in them will feel like, ugh, I can't. Where I've disciplined, really it's been a punishment, it's not been a discipline. So please offer yourself grace in this moment as you are here and you're wanting to keep growing in your parenting, so we can move away from punishment as a pattern. Parenting, we can move toward discipline. Discipline is about the heart. why we do what we do. The heart is the issue. The behavior is a tool. We're going to get to why the behavior is important, but the behavior is reflecting the heart. Okay? So, authoritative parenting, it's a balance of grace and truth. Think of it, it's soft on the person and hard on the issue. It's soft on the person and hard on the issue. And there's order. There's freedom, there's order. There's freedom, and there's order. The freedom is within the order. There's limited choices, so you can choose with the limits that show respect for all. All right, so parenting with grace and truth takes what the research authoritative parenting talks about and then amplifies it, because we have the Holy Spirit who guides us. He has given us the Bible to show us how to live. He gives us these beautiful guidelines that guide us toward loving Him more fully. The big commandment, love God with your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the big commandment. That's the big one, right? So, parenting with grace and truth uses that as what drives the interactions that we have with our kids. So we choose to follow God's guideline because He loves us. We experience God's grace and we offer it to our children today and freely. We experience God's discipline, like, ouch, I did that wrong, I get convicted. And we offer discipline to our children in love. We experience God's compassion and comfort, and we offer them to our children freely. We experience the freedom to choose, so we offer that freedom to choose for our children safely within the expectations and guidelines. We know that authority is God-given, and it's to be used for the good of those under it. As parents, your children are under your authority. It's a huge responsibility. You do not have to shy away from that. Our culture kind of like, is that what is that? But loving authority is not that cruel, awful, authoritarian, extreme vision of authority. Authority is that we're given is rooted in love, and that's really, really marvelous. So the Bible tells us to not abuse power and authority that we're given, to not exacerbate your child, to be rooted and grounded in love. So we're called to love those children that He's entrusted us. We are their authority, and we're letting them learn that they can trust their authority, and we're learning to submit to God's loving authority. Okay, so the balance of grace and truth. Soft on the issue, or soft on the child, hard on the issue. All right, so the parenting outcomes, just for those who are in research, the research around authoritative parenting is really encouraging, and for some people they need to know, why should I do this? Does this really work? So yes, the research shows the kids who come out of authoritative parenting homes, which is grace and truth, it leads to strong relationships that are secure, affectionate, and nurturing. It tends to increase confidence and self-esteem. The kids in those homes have higher confidence and self-esteem. The kids in those homes they have higher academic performance in general. They better ability to manage emotions, and they have more emotional regulation skills. They tend to be more responsible, and they have more communication and relationship skills. So why shouldn't we do this, right? It really is nice, but boy, is it hard sometimes. So I just want to be honest. It's hard sometimes, right? This is hard. There's the 3 couples that are kind of getting ready. It's hard. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And it's hard. And that's okay. And God's grace is sufficient for you as you parent. And that's important. God's grace is sufficient as we parent. So, okay. One question, I want to just throw this in here. A common question that I hear is, where does gentle parenting fit into these kinds of parenting styles? Because the research is around these big ideas. I know all of you have heard of gentle parenting. Some of you love it. Some of you hate it. Some of you are like, ugh. Some of you are like, yes. All right. So it's so confusing. So let me just say shortly, this is not the background. So the background of gentle parenting is, I believe it was an effort to rebrand the incredibly authoritative parenting. It's so confusing. My understanding of they took the authoritative parenting, give it words, fresh words that resonate with people. So the 3 C's are connection, communication, and consistency. Think about authoritative parenting. Connection, communication, consistency. They fit. And then they're also, the gentle parenting has taken some of the research around emotional regulation and some of those things and broadened that a little bit too. So the thing that's important is effective gentle parenting is authoritative parenting. Effective gentle parenting is authoritative parenting. Unfortunately, the term has gotten really confused, and what a wonderful term, gentle parent. I'm a gentle parent. So guess who else uses gentle parenting terms? Yeah, the ones that have permissive parenting. Because it's such a lovely term. But the problem is it gets, the label gets to be claimed when you're actually being permissive and not having boundaries, and that causes harm. I was talking with, by the way, there were 4 of you that I kind of asked lots and lots of questions around current, like your experience as parents, and I really appreciate your input. One person shared that she feels judged by those who are gentle parenting. She said it's like you're being irresponsible if you're not 100%. And others might see you and judge you when you're holding a boundary and think you're being a jerk. So that was a really honest, real life experience. So gentle parenting is so much a part of people's experiences. It's good at its heart and the way it's intended. It's really, really good. It's really good. And it's authoritative parenting. And it gets misused. So just be aware. If you're claiming yourself to be a gentle parent and you're being permissive, pay attention to that. That's not helpful. It's not helpful. And then be compassionate, because this is hard work being a parent, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to have you guys talk with each other around this question. What kind of parenting style do you lean toward? Because before we go forward, we have to know ourselves. What do you tend to do? What kind of parenting style did you grow up experiencing? How did that influence your choice as a parent, your choices as a parent? And do you see a generational pattern in your family? Your parents were so strict that you really leaned toward warm because you felt the coldness of them. Or maybe your parents were so easygoing without boundaries that you felt the pain of feeling just overwhelmed with choices, and so you are intending to create some order. So we all come from something. So what parenting style do you lean toward? Let's just go ahead and talk with the people that you were talking with before or somebody else, and let's just take a minute or two and talk about that. Did Meg get to see? Okay, thanks for sharing with each other. It's interesting to really think about it, isn't it? Like, where do you come from? What is your natural leaning? Knowing what your natural leaning is gives you an awareness of where your growth place is. And so as we do this, as we go forward, be thinking about that. What's less comfortable for me to apply, right? And what's something to expand that integration of both grace and truth in my parenting. All right, so our children, the important thing is our children need both the warmth of grace and the structure of truth. They need both the warmth of grace and the structure of truth. And it's just really, really important that we offer grace to ourselves as we respond to the truth internally as we're parenting, so that we can do that for our kids. Mm-hmm.
The 3 C's, you said connection, something, and
Connection, communication, and consistency is gentle parenting. Those are the 3 foundational pieces. So if you infuse that kind of I can see how those are great words to access authoritative parenting. Yeah, because authoritative parenting is hard to say. Like, I say it all the time, and it's hard to say. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions about that before we dive into the issues of the heart? Mm-hmm.
I had a question when I was thinking about, so sometimes so you were saying soft on the child and hard on the issue. Sometimes I have trouble hard on the issue because I'm indecisive.
And that is a hard thing. Yes, and as our temperaments show up in our parenting, right? Yeah. And so there can be a place where taking some time and identifying what are those true expectations. We'll talk about this in a minute. As a family, what are the rules? Like deep rules. Why? The whys. Because if you know the why, then that's a filter to use to decide. Well, I don't know what you mean. Then you know more of how you want to respond. And it's okay if you don't really know to say, you know what? Sometimes we just need to think about it. That's honest. Yeah. By the way, parents are perfect. And if you feel this pressure to be perfect, I just want to give you permission. Do not be perfect. God uses our imperfections to build resiliency in our children, and he gives us model humility in asking for forgiveness. It's okay. It's just part of the big picture as parents. Okay, let's dive into looking at the heart, not behaviors. This is so big, I just don't even have words for how important this is. It takes you out of authoritarian parenting, and especially, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, I think a lot of Christians lean toward authoritarian. And I think it's out of a desire to do the right thing and just not sure how you infuse grace, right? So this is a really good tool to infuse grace and to not be just focused on behaviors. So there are a couple of things. First is starting to think about, is my child's behavior childishness or foolishness? Childishness or foolishness? Parents with your child's heart as learn to look at their heart, not just the behavior. That can be hard to do. You have to learn to do that. You have to practice. Learning why are they doing what they're doing. So focusing on the heart of your unique child over the behavior. You have lots of kids. Some of you have lots of kids. That's each individual one, because the behavior of one could be done from one heart stance, and the behavior of the other is doing it from a whole different heart stance. Look at their hearts. Just learn to be really curious about their heart. The behavior has value, and there's a place we'll talk about it, but learn to look at their heart. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, the Lord doesn't look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearances, but the Lord looks at the heart. So it's super important. You look at their heart over their behaviors. It means resolution will be slower when there's something happening. because you don't just get to clean it up and have it be done. You have to be curious about what's underneath. And so that's work. It is work. It takes more time. That said, I will just give you a encouragement that when you're doing that, and that becomes the heart becomes the focal point of your training, over time you get less of the awful behaviors. It tends to reduce those behaviors because your kids know why they do what they do, and you're tending to the heart issues, which are the drivers, right? So it does take time. It does slow it down. Initially, it's frustrating, but it's really, really important. So it is seriously a really good investment in time. I remember just this quick story. When our kids were little, sometimes I would just feel like, because I had friends who were not tending to that, just focusing on the behavior, and they'd be done, and their kid would be, whatever the misbehavior happened, they would take care of it, be on their way, and we were, working on the heart issue, and it just was so much slower, and I just was so tired of it. But I persevered, and I'm so thankful, because over time, our kids didn't act out. They didn't do those things that some of our friends' kids did. Not that they weren't perfect. They weren't perfect kids. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But it reduced the negative behavior. So I want to encourage you there. Okay, so how do we look at the child's heart? We need to look at, just a second. Yeah, learn to look at their heart. Just a second, to see if I have something here. Okay, first thing, evaluate the intentions. If they're hungry, if they're angry, if they're lonely, if they're tired, halt. You guys familiar with halt? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If they're one of those things, tend to that first. It's not an issue of childishness or foolishness. They're hungry. Their blood sugars are off. Make sure their needs are met. Just do that. Don't try and look at the heart when you know that your kid just has seriously needs to eat something, okay? Or if they're really tired, maybe you went had a really great day, and probably it was a little more than what your child can emotionally and physically handle. Stimulation, like they're overstimulated. It's not the time to look at the issue of the heart. It's the time to let them go to sleep. Let them go to sleep. So be careful. In this desire to tend to the heart, don't throw out the obvious. Angry, lonely, tired. Tend to those things first, and then we can go on to the other issues, okay? Give yourself and your child that. Otherwise, you will frustrate them, and we're called not to frustrate our kids. Yeah. Okay, childishness versus foolishness. Can't say that well. It is the developmental, normal, age-appropriate mistakes, misunderstandings, decisions, silliness, not understanding or knowing the standard, and acting in ignorance. It's both the delightful and the frustrating reality of having little kids, right? Childishness is their kids, and God designed them to not know certain things at certain points. They can't understand certain things at certain ages. If you have an developmental stages of your little ones, I would encourage you in developmental stages, the normal range: social, emotional, intellectual, relational, spatial, big motor, like all the different ways that we assess developmental markers with kids. Please know that range for your child. And if you're they should be able to answer me why they did this right now, and I'm sorry, that is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not fair to them. Or if they say to you, you say, if you tell me something, they tell and ask until they're, and right now I just lost, I think it's 6, but double check. Tell and ask mean the same thing until a certain developmental stage. So you tell me, or you ask me, well, it means the same thing. The other thing, another piece, is kids will developmentally, when they're younger, they'll say to you, or no, they took the cookie. They took the cookie. Did you take the cookie? No, I didn't take the cookie. All right. Be careful to call that a lie, because they're learning that it's a lie, but if at young ages they're saying, what they're trying to say is, I wish I didn't take that cookie. I wish I didn't take that cookie, because they're wanting to please you. So they're going to say, because they want to please you, they don't want to disappoint you. But really what they're saying is, I wish I didn't do it, but you know what, I did. So if you have that awareness in your head, then if the kid says, I wish, or did you take the cookie? I didn't take the cookie. And you know they took the cookie. Say, you wish you didn't take the cookie. Yeah. And then we can talk about the heart, right? See how that goes? It's a help. So childishness, let yourself enjoy it when you can, because it goes away. And also you can instruct with what needs to be instructed. For example, a baby hair on mama's hair, initially it's just a reflex, right? It's just childishness. A toddler unrolling the toilet paper and then putting it all in the toilet because he saw mommy and daddy do that, right? So childish behavior. Preschooler saying a bad word, childish behavior. School-age kid forgetting their lunch, childish behavior. Now, foolishness is when you have the knowledge and the ability to meet the standard. So you know the standard, and you have the ability to meet the standard, but you choose not to. When I choose not to, I'm being foolish. So foolishness is different than childishness. And each of those examples, the pulling the hair, the toilet paper, the bad word, at a certain point, it's foolishness. Initially, it's childishness. Does that make sense? So looking for the heart, if you punish the kid for saying the bad word, they didn't even know it was a bad word. They just heard somebody say that. They're excited and they're copying because that's a developmental task of language, right? Then you're they get a sense of shame, and you're missing the opportunity to teach. You just teach. We're training them up, right? So, which, by the way, I'm going to throw out these little ideas along the way. So the bad preschoolers say it. If possible, just slide by, let it go. They're just trying different words. Make it be a big deal. And often you won't hear it. So they just, but if it's a thing and you're hearing it, then you say, in our family, we say blank, right? And you don't say, that word is so bad and it means all these things. Just say, in our family, we say blank because it's blank. Or because it's just a silly word. This is a silly word. That's our family word. By the way, when you are explaining why you do things, you explain one of the things to set it up is in our family. This is how we do it, a sense of identity. In our family, we do this. And sometimes that's all it do this because it's kind. And sometimes, depending on the developmental age of the kid, in our family we do this because it honors God, and that's the value we hold. Our friends that we love, that isn't a value they hold, and so that's why they don't do that. And we're just different. We do it differently. It's not judging, it's calling out and teaching what is true, and without condemnation. Okay? Any questions about that before I jump on? Mm-hmm.
The age of like foolishness, childish foolishness, like about what time, like this deceit coming?
Yeah, so the question is, about what time does foolishness kick in, right?
We're knowing deceitful, like lying and all that.
Yeah.
At this stage, and I feel like we're in it.
Yeah.
With a 7-year-old, I'm sure.
So at 7, I would between 6 and 7. Well, between 4 and 6, 7, right in that window. I would start with, if they're lying, I mean, obviously it's not true. If you respond with you wish blank, 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 whatever it is they're saying. You wish you didn't, can you give me an example? Like, you wish you didn't break a toy. Grab more candy. Yeah, it's Halloween time. Yeah, you wish you didn't grab more candy. And then if they can say, well, first of all, I would just say it as a statement. You wish you didn't, but you did. And so now, and then you just move past. You don't get caught in proving they have to admit that they lied. You're the authority, and you are noticing, you see the truth, you speak of it, and you move forward with the consequence, right? So then that's different than turning it into a battle of the wills. I did not, because then they're learning to defend this statement that they said because they didn't want to disappoint you, but now I need to just defend myself, right?
I don't want to get caught like using you're lying and then okay, well, I don't know if they're or not. Now I
It's awful. Yeah. Exactly. It's a bind. So I think I'd really love just taking your lying out of the conversation. So, and just instead, you wish blank. So whatever their lie is, and there's compassion there, right? You wish that you didn't eat candy. And you did. And so this is now what we're going to do. So we're taking out that conversation. It's not a power.
Would you say that responding that way just continues to establish more safety for the child to know, like, oh, there's safety here for me to tell the truth in the future?
Yeah, I think that it does. Her question or comment was, does that set you up so that the kid starts to build on that sense that they can tell the truth? It does, because you're starting to create there's a couple things. Mom and Dad really know everything, right? Mom and Dad, you can't really pull the wool over their eyes. It's not a battle. You're taking the battle out. And then separately, they worked with me. I had my consequence, and the relationship moved on and was restored. And so there's a safety of, when I mess up, I can come to my parents. In the long run, that's like a long investment. Yeah, that's a really good one.
And the term I like to use I just say the expectation is.
Yeah.
This is the expectation.
Yeah. This is the expectation. It's another way to do that. So when they're young, you wish you did. When they're a little bit older, and you can do it when they're younger too, the expectation is blank, and then just move forward. Yeah. Now, be careful, because if you're not sure, right? Yeah. And be careful, because if you're not really did it, then that is incredibly frustrating. Like, it turns out that they did the thing that they said they did, or didn't do the thing. And if we we can cause harm there too, right? If we misread the situation. So sometimes we're not sure. And so then it's tell me about it. Like, it looks, or we're going to work forward, this is our expectation. This is how we do it. And we're going to put the candy away without getting into the battle of, did you lie to me or not? Okay.
Normally when I say the expectation is, I have to follow that with, I'm not going to argue. And that's more for me to say, I'm not going to argue, but just to state it. I'm not going to argue. This is the expectation, of moving on.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that when you do have the expectation, you say why. This is the expectation because it's kind. We do this because it's respectful. We do this because it's thoughtful of others. We do this because that's how you take care of your body, or whatever it is. Yeah. Give them the why. Give them the why. Okay. All right, so childishness versus foolishness, super important to pay attention to those things. If you aren't familiar with development stages, please look that up. We didn't make copies for everybody, but I do have some you could take pictures of on your phone. Just some little sheets on that. You're welcome to that too. Okay, so we want to take the battles out. Unnecessary battles, we don't need them. They're exhausting. We have enough necessary battles that it's important to just not make battles over something that's just childishness. Plus, it's unfortunate, because then the kid feels dishonored. They feel, and you miss out on enjoying your kid. Okay, so we're one section. We're on break after this section, but we have one. So let me see. Let's keep going just for a few more minutes to cover one more section, and then we'll take our break. Okay, is that good? Okay, so the next one is to evaluate the attitude over the behavior. So we looked at the heart. We're looking at the heart, and we evaluate the intention over the behavior. Now we're evaluating the attitude over the behavior. This also is really, really important, and personally I think it's golden. It really helped in our parenting. It made a difference. I used it when I was a teacher, and I used it in my counseling work. It's just a really evaluate attitude over the behavior. So it's more important. Heart attitude is more important than the behavior. So here's an example. The parent tells the kid it's time to pick up the toys. The child obeys, but with a stinky attitude. Okay? Or the parent tells the child to say please, and the child growls a please. Anyone have growling please? Come back. Yes. I remember those, a few of those, like, that's really irritating, right? So the heart attitude there stinks. It stinks. And that is more important than the behavior. So yes, the child did what you asked them to do. The behavior was the appropriate behavior, but it was done with the wrong heart attitude. So how do you deal with that? Huh? Are you ready? I love this. This, if you, I want to encourage you to do this practice. So teach tone to your children, to tone of voice. Teach tone of voice. Tone of voice is the key indicator of one's attitude. So you teach your child to have the tone of voice that matches the attitude that you want to cultivate in your child. The tone of voice that matches that you want to cultivate in your child. So what are the attitudes you want to have cultivated in your kids? Respect. You bet. What else? Responsibility. Compassion. Kindness. Yeah. So respect, kindness, patience, gentleness, all those attitudes, we want those for our kids because they'll flourish with them, right? Those are the attitudes that a child and a grown-up flourish with. We want those so much. So what do those sound like, those attitudes? You know when someone speaks with respect. You know when they speak with disrespect. You know when they speak with a gentleness or when they're being harsh. You know when they're speaking with anger or when they're speaking with patience, right? So we know what those sound like. So guess what? We get to model them. So when the child says something with the wrong attitude, and they will, kindly repeat the statement with the correct attitude. You're not turning it into a battle, like you have to say it this way. You just say it with the attitude that has the heart stance you want. So if it's the baby screams, please, or it's not please, the baby can't say that. Screams for something, like how they do when they're doing that. Just please with a pleasant inflection and keep moving. And then you're modeling. They catch it. Toddler demands, I want juice. So calmly say, may I have juice, please? And move forward. Preschooler whines. Say the statement without whining. A school-age kid disrespectfully says, thank you. Like, thank you. Like, I remember some of those. Respectfully say, thank you. So at first you just model. And at first means, I don't have an exact time. At first it can be months. It can maybe years. I don't know about years. But at first you model it, right? You model the tone you want. And then you go to having them repeat the correct. Not the babies, obviously, never the babies. But they need to have it be known. Like our little grandson, he's now almost 4, and we've been working on a certain tone, and so when he comes to grandma's house, and so he is pretty cute to watch because he's catching it. So at first it was just modeled, and then it was, this is what we say. Just pause. Just kind of doing things and not getting it. I say what I want him to say. I model it, but I'm not making it a battle. That's just it. And so at that point, I expect him to repeat it. But I don't make it it's not a battle, a spirit of battle, because again, if he's hungry, angry, lonely, tired, that is not to really demand something, right? So we're kind of removing with that. We're kind of, it's a dance, it's massaging it. I don't know how to say that very well. And for those of you who like structure and order, I'm sorry, it's not quite there. It's a bit of a nuanced process, but that is real, because that's our kids, and they're not, they're not robots. So we want to model, then we expect it with a statement. But with teens, how many of you have, does anybody have teens? Okay, soon, some of you are soon. With teens, different mode. I would never, not never, I don't think it's very fruitful to have, because then we get into like a real power struggle. Instead, I think it's more effective to say the modified attitude and give them a smile. No bad. So they're, and you say, or whatever, you do it, and then you move on. And I was talking to our daughter when I was talking about doing this, and she laughed. She said, I remember you did that a lot. So it just takes the moment out of becoming a big ugly that teenagers can embrace. Okay, does the tone guarantee the right attitude? No, I'm sorry to tell you. Guarantee the right attitude, but it practices the stance of the attitude. And brain research is on our side, parents, because when we practice the stance of an attitude, a physical stance, a tone of voice stance, it helps us it kind of tricks the brain into being more receptive to that attitude. So that's helpful. Okay. It's important to remember each person has free will to choose their attitude. That includes little ones, that includes teens, that includes us. We cannot make our children have a certain attitude, so don't try and control it. Don't try and control the actual attitude, but they get to practice the tone because that's part of how we do it as a family. That's really important. Focus on modeling the attitude in your own life. That helps them catch it more, right? They catch the tones. They're familiar with those tones you want because they come from you. All right, so how is your tone of voice as a parent? And here we need to be honest, facing the reality of the truth, as well as offering grace, which includes goodness, but also there's an interaction. Where tones of my voice are helpful to my child, and which ones are? Because there are some tones of my voice that are really helpful to my child. But do I have whininess in my voice? Am I impatient? Do they hear the tone of mocking? Do they hear the tone of demanding, anger? Do they hear patience? Do they hear calm? Do they hear kindness? So that's important. Maybe on your own when you have some time to reflect, listen to God's prompting in you. Listen to your tone. And if you hear tones that, I don't want that tone, I want my kid to not have that tone, we have to work on not having that tone ourselves, okay? And last, before we take our break, is words are important. So tone is important, and words are important. Teach your child to use the words of respect. Our culture in the Northwest doesn't have a lot of this kind of woven into it. Some culture, some like the South, yes ma'am, they just do that. You guys grew up in some, like the South, the family, that yes ma'am was just kind of a pattern. It doesn't guarantee a heart stance, but it's a good practice. So teach your child to answer, yes mommy, when we call her, yes daddy, instead of what, okay? Because if your kid says, what? That's just because they have, you need to teach them that you expect this tone of voice. It doesn't have to be, yes, mommy. It can be something else that feels respectful. I mean, again, it's not cookie cutter. We chose to, when we called them, whatever they were doing, they just needed to respond with, yes, mom, or yes, mommy, or whatever, yes, daddy, and then we went from there, right? So, stance of an attitude ready to engage their parents. It's like a little pattern of words, of language that helps support the heart attitude we want them to develop. Questions about that? Mm-hmm.
When between siblings, they can apologize for
Mm-hmm.
make it right and like move on from like there was an actual offense and then saying sorry when the person has to say sorry or like that. How do you address that?
Okay, so she did that. I'm not sure if everyone heard. Did everybody hear? Okay, so when you're having the kids do the repair of I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. So it's kind of tricky. Again, not a cookie cutter piece. You're wanting to focus on the heart. So that was enough for that child to actually do that work, to actually say the words, even though there was no sorriness there. But it was like they just they worked hard to follow along in that boundary. That's where you have to assess. That was their work in that moment. That's enough. But stay there long term, right? So then, if it is deeper, or they've moved along, and you want to help them have a heart stance that is different, then I think that's a good time to just say, "Hey, tell me about what you're feeling, because it didn't sound like you were sorry. What are you really feeling?" And see if they can. Maybe that's a chance to talk about mad at him still, yeah, or he didn't, whatever the perception is, and their issue that's driving that. I'm sorry, right? So depending on the moment, opportunity for helping the kid come along in their communication, as well as their relational repair. And sometimes it's that's not how I say it. You know, the tone of how we say our sorry is the tone is this way. So you've got all those pieces depending on the developmental level, what they're working on, but any of those could be useful. And each kid just kind of play with it, like listen to your mother's instinct in the moment of they know what that was enough for them, or they know and they're ready, or there's something else going on there, or they just need to practice this tone and they need help with that stance, that a relational stance. So it could be any of those things. Yeah. It's so much. I think parenting is the most complex task you will ever do in your life. It is beautiful that God entrusts us to raise our children, and He offers us grace as we raise our children. So please remember, as you have these moments that are so hard, and what do you do? They're driving you nuts. Okay, with that, we're going to take actually, can we just take a 5 to 7 minute break, kind of swish it in, and we'll start in just a few minutes when everyone's back, but I want a little break to get up, okay? Okay, so if we can start coming back, we'll get started in a minute. Isn't that a great graphic? Okay. Yep. Uh-huh.
There was a suggestion that this needs to be a series.
You know, I have to tell you, so it's really funny. So way back when, I don't know when, it was a long time ago. We've been around a long time. We did a biblical parenting, biblical principles of parenting. It was a 12-week course we did. It was a Sunday school class. We did that. And so this is like packing pieces of that in, squishing it and trying to get it in 2 hours. So yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, because there's so much, and this is hard, and it's so important. It's so important. And parenting, I just feel so passionate about. Christians have the opportunity to infuse God's word and His love, all of that, grace and love, grace and truth, into their homes. And Christians, our homes should look different and feel different. And they can. They aren't perfect, but they can be rich, filled with love. And part of the imperfection is because of grace, right? We get to claim God's grace. We don't have to be perfect, but we can be filled with love. Okay, here we go. You ready? All right, so we're going to go on to talk about teach your child to identify and move through their feelings. That's the next one. Teach your kids to identify and move through their feelings. Okay, so the research shows that if a kid can identify what they're feeling at low intensity levels, right? Low intensity. They can identify what they're feeling when it's low, and if mom and dad notice and think that low intensity feeling is important, then they are able to problem solve and be able to take on the challenges that they face in a way that really gains confidence. So they become less dysregulated, and they can grow into people who aren't debilitated by emotional experiences. So this skill set is called emotional intelligence. And you probably have heard of emotional intelligence and maybe know lots about it. So I was wrestling with how much time to spend on this, because I know some of you thought about it and some of you know about it. So in your handout is like a to-go sheet. A lot of people, I'll give you like clients at work, and they'll put them on their fridge. It's a guide for moving through the process of building emotional intelligence. So the key, well, we won't go through all of it right now, but the key to communicate respect is communicating respect for your child's emotions. If that little emotion is important, what is that? And they get their parents' attention and help with a little emotion. Think what that communicates, as opposed to, I don't get any attention until I'm having a big meltdown. That's a whole different message about emotions. So when we care enough to come alongside a little sadness, I broke my crayon, and you come alongside and you say, oh, I remember when I broke my crayon. You're feeling sad. And so you begin the process of labeling the emotion and validating that, yes, that experience is normal. Because then if mom or dad or grandma has experienced this and they survived the broken crayon, I can too. You know, it's huge. It's a gift we give our children when we care and help them through low intensity emotions. It matters. So it's really important. Communication of emotion is, our emotions communicate what we need, what we feel, what our experience is, what our perspective is. So learning to show respect for that is really empowering. God created those emotions. They get to learn how to regulate them, just like we do, but God created those emotions. So a key just for all you a really important thing. Under anger, if your kid is really angry, if your spouse is really angry, this applies really angry, almost always, not always, but almost always underneath that anger is hurt or sadness or fear. Those are way more vulnerable to show and even identify inside ourselves. So we will be angry. Just our emotions are a way to with others. And sometimes we don't even know what we're communicating. Sidebars. If your kid is angry, pay attention. Look underneath it. Maybe they're hurt, maybe they're sad, maybe they're afraid. All right, when you see a child doing what you want your child to do, and you wish your child was like that child, be aware. That's envy. So some kids, seriously, that happens, and it's your heart issue, right? It's your heart issue. So the change isn't about your kid and their way of expressing their emotions. The change is your heart. So don't shame yourself. Don't shame your kid because they're having a meltdown. I really don't want them to have a meltdown right now. I don't know. I love in our church that children are truly welcome and they're not expected to be perfect. And just the same, it's tough if it's your kid who's having the meltdown, you really wish it wasn't your kid having the meltdown, right? It's just a miserable feeling. So, and you see the other kid who's behaving so nicely. I wish my kid was that way. That's envy. That's envy. You thought that's envy? Yeah, it's envy. That's you on yours. Have compassion for your child, and you're working to help your child learn how to regulate those heavy heart emotions. So, but the learning, the teaching time is when it's low intensity. If it's big emotion, it's a different issue. We've got to just help them through that. We can talk about that in a minute. But the training up of identifying your emotion, seeing it as important, and then problem solving and figuring out what you need to do or what you can do to solve your problem, that happens when the emotions are low intensity. So, babies, toddlers, preschoolers, school age, even teens sometimes are learning how to regulate their emotions. And they learn best by having a loving adult co-regulate with them and co-regulate those emotions with them. This is called attunement. So attunement is when you are connected, the child feels felt by you. You know, like maybe with a spouse where you just feel felt, you feel understood, that you're really attuned. They get you. It feels so good. I get that with my husband. It's wonderful. And so then with that, kids, when they're upset and things are really hard, if you can attune with them and like kind of match what they feel, that's co-regulating. You can calm them down. I saw Chris, our son-in-law, today do it beautifully. Our grandson Elias woke up from his nap at our house, and he was disoriented. So he's just now starting to stay where he's at our house during nap, and he woke up and he was scared. He was confused. It wasn't at his house. And so his daddy was there, and he went in and brought him down. He was talking to him and just comforting him. And then as he was holding him, he did the beautiful co-regulating piece of breathing. He matched some of the breathing pattern of the baby, of Elias, and modeled the next step. It was so cool. So he was, and he just did that until Elias calmed and went to the next part. And it was beautiful. And he's teaching his child how to manage low intensity. In that case, it was a little bit bigger, but low intensity emotion, just emotion, and bring it down and be able to calm. Our kids themselves on their own until they learn how to. And that's part of our parenting, to give them the gift of developing that. So this form that was included, that is really helpful for emotional intelligence. Co-regulation is broader. You use your eyes, you use your tone, you use your expression, you use your voice, and you match where they are and then slowly bring them down, okay? So if a kid is super dysregulated and they're just bouncing, match the energy, but not the misbehavior, right? So it's like they're just kind of all over, and I am mad, and then it's like, wow, and it's like you join them in that intensity, and then you start moving down. And so maybe initially you've got to be there for, depends on how long it is with the kid. Maybe you join them and just, wow, I think, and then maybe move big moves. I'm going to do a big move and a jump and something big, and then you can start to slow down, and they can engage you with the intensity of where they're at. Okay, that feels like it was kind of random. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. Questions?
I just have a really quick comment. One of the things that has helped me the most with the really big feelings, because I'm really triggered by the big feelings, because they were not okay in my house. They were punished harshly. Is my child is not giving me a hard time. My child is having a hard time.
That is beautiful.
When they are having a hard time.
Oh, I love that. That's really good. Yeah, they're not giving you, they're having, because they are having it. It's hard on you. And if you, like you said, if you grew up where big emotions were not allowed, that's scary. And part of our growing is learning how to make room for them, not to rule. They don't have to rule, but they matter, and we can move them forward so they know how to move forward, right? Thank you for that.
And you're going to laugh when I say this, but because of our experience with the school district together, all behavior is communication. Yes.
It is.
Finding ourselves at that constant. All
Yeah.
behavior is communication. What are they communicating?
Yeah, it's really true. It's really true. Yeah, so all behavior is communication. And God gave us, and all emotion is communication. Yeah, yeah. So we want to look at what's under. Okay, so co-regulation and connection do not mean that you have to hold their hand every time they have any emotion until the very end of the emotion, because then guess what? You're going to go nuts, right? That's not helpful. It actually induces anxiety. Interesting. If every time they have an emotion, and because you want to be there, you want to co-regulate, and you want to help them, and you kind of jump in and everything stops because of their emotion, you actually are communicating, this emotion is scary, and this emotion controls my parent. That's different than co-regulating, where you join in the intensity and then gently move forward, can move down. Sometimes an emotion needs space, you know? Some kids, they need some space, and that's actually co-regulating. So there's a wisdom in how you co-regulate for the child that is the child that you have and the issues that they're working through. Today, another example. So Theodore, our almost 4-year-old grandson, he was playing around and he bonked his head. Well, when he bonks his head, he doesn't want instant tension. He really wants to kind of calm himself internally, and then he wants to engage. That's just who he is, honoring who he is. And so that co-regulation, I intentionally waited. And I did a little test, and it really didn't work. I did, and he's like, okay, so that he doesn't want that. So then I said, I just kind of went and did some things in the kitchen, kind of watching, waiting, and then he came over, and he was ready to engage. So that co-regulating doesn't mean you have to always stop everything and just be there, because sometimes co-regulating is giving them room to feel a feeling, right? So there's a learning process in that, and you're holding the room for that. So respect for your child's emotions doesn't mean that you have to give endless airtime for the emotions and desires. It's okay to have proactive boundaries for yourself to preserve your own reserves and well-being. The cap for airtime for the child's emotions and desires depends on the child, depends on their developmental age, depends on their unique circumstance. But give yourself permission in your desire to help develop this emotional intelligence and to help them learn how to self-soothe and to help them have a sense of their own agency. Just be careful to do it in a way that honors them and also doesn't make you snap. Because when you snap, you turned out to not be doing, it's not very helpful, okay? So it's okay if you need to tap out. Like if a kid needs to tap out, you can do that. If you need to tap out because a kid is just still dysregulated and you're just starting to feel flooded, if you have a spouse at home, it's really awesome to have some sort of code where you take turns to go breathe. If you don't have another spouse or another partner in the home, then I encourage you to also, all the more, you need to let yourself hold those reserves because you're not invincible. It's really okay if you need to have a breather. You can say, I need to take a few minutes to calm. I'll be back in a few minutes. Mom's going to go fold the laundry. I'll come back in a few minutes. Or whatever. You can do that if that helps you with that process of co-regulating. Okay? So the key is your kid is overstimulated. You, as a parent, your nervous system can get overstimulated. And if you want to parent well, you have to pay attention to your own nervous system too. Right? There's a lot of stuff packed into that couple sentences. Okay. More willing to accept the standards you give him. When a child is able to understand their feelings, she's better prepared to manage her feelings. And that takes time. They're learning. Okay. So use these moments when the rough moments come, the crin is broken. Use these moments to teach and to connect. If a child is sad, afraid, or angry, notice the emotion when it's small and use it to teach. It communicates that they're accepted the way they are, and it also is a great time to set limits on the child's behaviors. So just because something's really hard, I broke my crayon and it makes me really sad, doesn't mean I get to throw the crayons all over the house, right? So we can be sad, we can be angry, but we have a limit on our behavior, and you can use that language. So the emotional skills are developing. Okay, so parenting with grace, and then parent with truth. In the process of parenting, you want to be empathetic, co-regulate through the voice, the facial expressions and emotions, and then hold the boundary, and this builds resilience. You know that boundary that started the whole meltdown? Please don't forget it. It's really easy when the meltdown happens. You're so glad they've all calmed down. It would be nice just to kind of ignore it. But if it started because of some boundary that you had, it's really important to gently come back and finish that out. Okay? Gently. So, and I'm involved because sometimes that boundary next day because maybe they have to go to bed because they're so sleepy. That's okay. But maybe whatever it is still gets to be done. Okay. Next part of this is setting clear expectations and why we do what we do. So, do your kids know the expectations that you have for them, for their behaviors, and their attitudes? Interesting thing. Do your kids know your expectations for their behaviors and attitudes? Obviously, they are going to know it on a different level, right? Some of this, little ones. They're starting to know, even at this point. Like, how old is your guy? 2.5. Yeah. So he's starting to know. And that's important. Do they know why these expectations are in place? Do you know why you have the rules you have that you have? If you don't know why, then they sure aren't not gonna know why, right? Well, we just do it because, that's what a good family does. Well, maybe not, yeah, right? Or we do it because I saw it on Instagram and I need to do it. Maybe not, right? What do we do? Why do we do it? What are the expectations? And why we do it needs to be rooted in grace. So, have you written out your family rules? If you haven't done that, please take that as one of the things you take away. Please take time to articulate to yourself, first of all, between the adults in the house, what are our rules? Why do we have them? What is important to us? For us, with our family, we had just a few rules. We had be kind, be respectful. Honestly, that covers so much. Like seriously, it worked really well. So then the logistics of how you play that out, we could talk about specifics, but the rule was to be kind. The rule was to be respectful. And so and do you notice what that aimed at? See? Grace and truth, yeah, and the attitude, it's the heart. It's aimed at the heart. It's aimed at the heart. The rule aimed at the heart, right? And then because that's the important place. Behaviors flow out of that place. A very different place than we do this because that's how we do it. But no, we do it because it is this. Or because we value this. And I don't want to tell you exactly what your rules are because that's not mine to say. But you guys need to decide what are your family rules and why. And when you write them down, I encourage you to write them in the proactive mode. No, we don't hit each other. Well, it's good not to hit each other. What do? We use gentle hands. Or we say it in the positive, right? So we use loving hands, however you want to say that. But we don't give our direction, because if I say, quit hitting your sister, guess what they hear? Hit my sister! That was the last thing in the brain. Hit my sister! Don't hit my sister. Sister, yes! Right? So it really works against you if the rule is in the negative. It really is better if the rule is in the proactive stance of what you want. So if you haven't done this yet, please take the time. It will save you a lot of grief. And I think it honors the kids. It helps them know what you want them to do. And link it to why. Another piece with the rules and expectations, in transitions are hard for kids. They're hard for grown-ups. They're hard for kids. Please be prepared at transitions to teach. You're teaching, we're always teaching. Teach your children by speaking about the expectations for what's coming. So if we're getting ready to go, so we're going to get ready to go, and I need you to put your shoes on and grab your backpack. Say what to do, right? Not what not to do, however you want to do that. But the key is to say the transition, what you want to do. On the front end of the transition, in the car, I remember having conversations when we would be driving somewhere, and there was some of social interaction, and I wanted the kids to practice saying thank you to the people we were going to be with. So at that point, that was what we were working on. So then it was, we're going to go see Susie, and we're going to have a nice dinner with them, and they took time to make this for us, and we're going to show respect by saying thank you at the end. And that's what we're going to do. And then so we just talk it through ahead of time. Not in the moment. The moment's okay. But on the front end, transitions, it's really helpful. How do my rules apply to this moment? How do the family rules apply to this moment? What are my expectations? Then you have the limits. Give choices. Give choices. So choices are so powerful. God gives us the choice to follow him or not. God gives us the choice. We get so many choices. He designed us to have choice. We need to give our children choices inside limits. So we're getting ready to go. You can grab your bag on first. They get to choose. You limited choices. Give them some choice. In every situation, if possible, almost every, give a choice, right? So it's time to get ready for bed. You can choose if you want to brush your teeth or put your pajamas on first. This has to be age dependent, right? So you find a way to give a choice inside the expectation. Choice inside the expectation. So there is an expected obedient heart and the behaviors that come out of that, but the expectation, there's room for choice. Or time to get ready for school. So you need to go get dressed now. Do you want to wear your red pants or your blue pants? That kind of thing. Limited choices. Questions about that? It's a big one. And it's really nice sometimes to talk with each other around, hey, like, I need some ideas of how to give choices. Sometimes we forget about it.
My 3-year-old's going 17. She like to be limited, so when we give her 2 choices for Sunday, the dresses you can wear, she doesn't want those. She wants something else. How do we go about dealing with that, or addressing that concern in a constructive way?
Yeah. So a couple things. There's a couple different strategies. Sometimes, as I just said, the 2 choices, sometimes you got to flex, right? Because maybe you right? You know? Yeah. Yeah. So honestly, but that sometimes that's real. So that's where we have this is kind of a lines there. But in general, if that's a battle line in the morning, the night before, you could do that. Disrupt the timing. Maybe that timing of getting ready feels too much stimulation for her. So sometimes that decision of what you want to wear, and for the dress, she's 3 going on 17. She might have some ideas. So you maybe even just start with, because some kids, like, this is where it's so like this no cookie cutter exact thing. Some kids have style. They just have style, their own style, and it will embarrass you, and it's okay. Huh? Yeah. So it may be that particular way, she can. You give her a different choice. You take out, instead of making that be a battle, maybe the choice is, does she want to put the dress on or brush her teeth? Just give her a different choice. Sometimes, if it's going to be this giant battle, and ultimately you're just practicing choosing, flip it up. You get to be the ones that decide what the expectation is, and the choice to decide it. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So it's so interesting because I think when we're parenting from this stance of grace and truth, it's not rigid. So there's this. We're flexing, but we're holding this firm boundary of expectation rooted in love. And then sometimes I need to modify it because it feels too rigid. So for her, maybe that one's just too rigid, and it really isn't important. Different kid or different moment, maybe it is going to be like, it's again, what is the heart stance? Is her heart just desiring to wear something else, or is her heart desiring to be in charge? You know, so then that's a different reason you would respond differently. It's like, oh, today these are the choices, and then maybe next week we'll pick the choices out before on Saturday or something like that, so you can work with her a little too.
Can I throw out one other idea?
Yeah, please.
And it may not work with her at all, but something that works with my kids is that sometimes seeing a whole dress on a hanger is overstimulating in and of itself. So I like to kind of fold them up, roll them up, and then you just have these 2 things in your hand and you're picking, and it's like a grab bag mystery thing.
that's a great one. And that reflects on honoring the wiring of your child. If your child tends to be overstimulated by visual cues or sensory issues, that they need less. We need to be paying attention to that. If your child needs big movement in order to function well, then to add into the decisions, right? So like, every kid is so different, and we have to take these principles and apply them to our unique kids. And yeah, super important.
Not to beat a dead horse, but so my kid, if I give him two options, he cannot make a decision, and he has.
Yeah. So a couple things there. I would bring it, like, practice that when the stakes are smaller, like maybe the day before kind of thing. And just know that that's part of his journey. So starting with two choices that he perceives as safe. So he perceives that they're safe, he's not going to miss out, and it's not going to cost him greatly. Does he eat his sandwich on this side of the plate or this side of the plate? You know, like, just start there and build that confidence. Yeah. Because that's a really good example. There are some kids that, don't you tell me no, it's the choice, I need all the choices, and others, I'm afraid of my choices. Temperaments in kids, that's real. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. So I think that's enough of that. The only thing is, when your child is tired or overstimulated, it's your job to help them. These are not useful teaching moments. They're not useful teaching moments. Just let them get rested and calm down, right? Save the teaching for when they're not that way. It is a fruitless effort to do it, to try and to do it when they're dysregulated. Okay, so now we're going to jump on the goals. Okay. Mistaken goals. Okay, on your sheet, yikes, time is zoomed. Okay, on your handout is the mistaken goals chart, and this is a golden piece of paper. I love this piece of paper. This chart is so helpful. If your kids can't read, put it on the fridge. If they can read, don't put it on the fridge. So, all right, so how do you know when your kid needs a nap? You know because of their behaviors and their emotions. How do you know when they're hungry? It shows, right? How do you know when they're overstimulated and need a calm place? And also, as I say that, do you know? If you don't know when your kid is tired, be curious and learn. If you don't know when your kid is hungry, what are the cues that they're getting that way? Pay attention. If you don't know when they're overstimulated, please begin to be curious with a respectful, loving curiosity. So kids' behaviors are their way of communicating what they need, which is what you were saying. Yeah. Use negative behavior when they don't have an effective way to communicate. So, mistaken goals. This is great. So misbehaviors communicate emotions and thoughts too. So misbehaviors reflect the heart's desire to belong and to be significant in the family. With childish reasoning, the children often, behavior confirms their child that they belong in the family and the significance in the family, even if it's a miserable place and it's driving me nuts. Okay, so when we figure out what the misbehavior is reflecting about how our child is thinking or feeling, then we can guide them to change their inner thinking. So, really quick, because we're really out of time. The key thing is there are 4 mistaken goals. Kids want undue attention because they believe that they need to be the center of attention to belong. So keeping others busy and getting special services is the goal. So they do have undue attention. Some kids want to be the boss. It's misguided power. Some want revenge. They want to get even. And some assume inadequacy because they give up and they just want to be left alone. So we need to learn behind our kids' behavior, the beliefs they have. So the 3 clues, and it's the 3 big understanding what's driving our kids' behavior: our own feelings, our attempts to stop the behavior, and our children's response to our ineffective actions. So, for example, we'll just do one: undue attention. If the goal is undue attention, it's the top list, the top row, and you feel annoyed, irritated, worried, or guilty, and you tend to react by reminding, coaxing, and doing things for the children because they could do for themselves. And if the child then responds with stopping temporarily, it fixes it short term, but later assumes the same or other disturbing behavior, then the belief behind the child's behavior is, I count or belong only when I'm being noticed and getting special services, or I'm only important when I'm keeping you busy with messages, notice me, involve me usefully. And then there's some suggestions, ways to do for parents to respond. This is really helpful. I really love this chart. If you're finding yourself having, like, to feel angry and irritated, or guilty, or angry, challenged, threatened, defeated, or hurt, disappointed, disbelieving, disgusted, or despairing, hopeless, helpless, inadequate, good sign. Something that we can do. It's probably this is one of these is going on. Let's tend to the belief the child has. It's driving this mistaken goal that is really unpleasant, and let's tend to that heart place. Okay, so there's so much there, but I just really want I want you to be encouraged that that when you identify you're feeling reactive, often the kid has his behavior is letting you know that they have these beliefs about how they belong, and they want to belong, and they don't know how to do it, and they're doing it wrong. And it's not because you're doing something terrible as a parent, because kids just do things. They get the temperaments, interact with moments, interact with their temperaments. It happens. So if you notice that, use this tool to help break up that cycle. Okay? All right. And really fast. Repair. We want to cover relational repair. We'll just really quick talk about. We're going to mess up. We're going to mess up as parents. We really desire to do the best we can do. We will not do it perfectly. We bring to our family the stuff of our own family's past, the good and the not so good. And we bring that in, and we interact with these kids who have different temperaments. We're going to have moments where there's rupture in relationship. That's okay. It's going to happen. It's okay. When you're parenting with grace and truth, those ruptures are opportunities to model forgiveness, to model humility, to model grace. That's what it is. So when that happens, if you as the parent realize you did something, it's beautiful to start with. When you've done something, you lost your temper, you said something, own it, right? Own it, and go apologize. Ask the child for their forgiveness for what you did, and with the attitude of genuine repentance, I'm sorry, right? With the tone of I'm sorry, that real tone, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Mommy did that. I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't right to do. So that is hard if you didn't cope with that. It's powerful because our kids know we messed up anyway, and we're just modeling that we live out grace, and we're modeling that the truth is real. We really believe it, and grace applies to us. And that is so beautiful. That is a different tone in a Christian home. That is powerful. That is just so powerful. The goal of parenting is not perfection. A more realistic and godly goal is a repair goal. We want to teach our children that in our family we will mess up, we will do wrong, and we are committed to repairing that through forgiveness, repentance, the repairing process. And guess what? That builds resilience our children. Resiliency is so missing in our culture. It is so missing in our culture. Lots of reasons. But this in our family, something bad can happen, and we tend to it. We don't bury it under the rug. We blow up in big ways, but we own it, and we through apologies, seeking forgiveness, and offering forgiveness. That is beautiful. And in that resilience starts to grow. All right, there's so much, and we didn't even get to all the parts, but I want to honor the time, and we have wonderful volunteers who helped out. Will you, right now, we just went like in a word, pause and find one thing that we covered today that you want to make sure you don't forget. Maybe something that you want to think more on, or an action you want to take. And write it down somewhere on your notes, just because otherwise when you walk out you will forget. That's how our brains are. Maybe a reminder, an encouragement, a new idea, or a tool to practice. All right, so thank you for sharing this evening with me. I want to thank the cadre of young moms who answered my questions and shared their hearts, and really want to thank the team that, watched the kids and got things set up. It was a lot of people poured themselves into this for you parents, because this is really important. Parenting is hard, and it's the most important thing. It's just a huge role. So there's so much more we could have talked about. There's so much in each of these to put into play. But please don't give yourself, please don't should yourself. I should do this, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this. Pick one thing that you want to take and practice, and that's the way we begin to change. Offer yourself grace inside that truth as you are parenting, as you then take that in and parent your kids. Okay? So thank you, guys. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.